It is game day for the Baltimore Ravens. They're going to be facing off against the Buffalo Bills in primetime at M&T Bank Stadium. And we have a game day episode talking about the biggest matchups, key storylines, final predictions, and so much more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this game day, making Locked On Ravens both your first listen every day and a part of your day in general. Free and available for you all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on as well. Also in audio form, wherever you get your podcasts, you can turn notifications on, subscribe, and follow along there as well for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage each and every single week. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens here on Game Day is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We do these game day episodes every single Sunday leading up to game day. Tonight's game, obviously, the Sunday night matchup. Really good one between the Ravens and the Bills coming up. So we have a lot to dive into. This is a huge game for Baltimore. Obviously, it's huge for Buffalo as well, just in terms of them staying undefeated. Baltimore, we talked about that 0-3 hole they could have fallen into in week 3. Well, you don't want to fall into a 1-3 hole here in week 4. So really important they're able to get this win. And I'm going to be diving into everything from how the Ravens offense matches up with the Bills defense, vice versa with the Ravens defense versus the Bills offense. Getting into some players to watch as well. There are actually some injury updates on the Ravens side of things. New information that came out on yesterday, and not necessarily great news for Baltimore. So we'll dive into all of that here today. But let's start off first with, let's get into the injuries first. Just off the bat, we can take those notes and we'll use those throughout the entirety of the show. So the Ravens provided an injury update ahead of the game tonight, and a couple of not so great ones. The first one being Jalen Armour-Davis, their cornerback, who obviously was ruled out for the game initially with a hamstring injury. He is now on injured reserve. Baltimore placed him there, so he's going to miss a minimum of 4 weeks now. That's the designation. They can obviously bring him back after that, but he left week 3 with that hamstring, and obviously it's serious enough to where they'll put him on injured reserve here. Maybe this means TJ Tampa gets into the fold. Armour-Davis was playing somewhat on that defense, so Nate Wiggins, I think his snaps will continue to increase. But with TJ Tampa, I know we've seen him as a game day inactive. I think this probably could be his first active game as a member of the Ravens. Michael Pierce was dealing with a shoulder injury. He was seen flexing his arm, flexing his shoulder in that week 3 game. Not a lot of people made a ton about it. Obviously, he missed some practice time, but it looked like he was on track to go. But yesterday, they ended up downgrading Michael Pierce to doubtful. So seems like Michael Pierce will not play. The Ravens only made one elevation to their roster from the practice squad, and that is running back Chris Collier. So no defensive line were brought up, no outside linebackers, no corners even for Jalen Armour-Davis. Kadar Holman was that guy who was brought up initially for these first couple of games. But I would probably anticipate, obviously, if Michael Pierce isn't able to go, Brent Urban will be active. The Ravens will go with 4 defensive linemen that way. And other than that, probably same old outside of Urban and TJ Tampa. Those are the 2 guys I think will be active in place of Jalen Armour-Davis and Michael Pierce if they're not able to end up going. But with that being said, I think it's important to dive into just how these teams match up side by side with one another. And so let's start off with the Ravens offense against the Bills defense. We saw a lot of good things from the Ravens in that week 3 game. I mean, they did a lot of great things. I'll pull up the stats from the Dallas game quickly here just so we can get a visual on it. Baltimore's offense, 274 rushing yards on 6.1 yards per rush. Also, again, they didn't throw the ball a lot, only 15 attempts in this game. I expect Baltimore to throw the ball a lot more in week 4 against Buffalo. 12.1 yards per pass, though. And that wasn't necessarily they were pushing the ball down the field. It was more so Nelson Agholor catches the ball 8 yards down the field, jukes his defender, and runs for like 50 more. They get Derrick Henry out in space on a couple screen passes, and Charlie Kohler takes a pass, 5 yards out and takes it for 25 more yards. So the air yards weren't necessarily there. It was more yards after the catch. that obviously all goes into the 12.1 yards per pass. But again, I do expect the Ravens to have a more balanced attack in this game. But with that being said, if I'm the Ravens, I am fully trying to attack Buffalo on the ground. We know the Baltimore's run defense, their run defense is the one you don't want to challenge. The Bills, on the other hand, I would certainly go after Buffalo. Their run defense ranks 22nd in the league right now in terms of yards per attempt. And again, if you don't know how I grade out run defenses and pass defenses or just offenses in general, for both sides of the ball, I don't necessarily go off of total yards. I go off of yards per attempt because if an offense throws the ball 100 times, they're going to naturally have more passing yards than an offense that throws the ball 20 times. But it's about how many yards per attempt you give up. That, to me, is where that goes. So Buffalo's run defense, again, not wonderful this season. Actually, I was wrong. Well, I guess maybe this is updated. It was 22nd. Now it's 24th based off of maybe Thursday night or something along those lines. But again, in the low to mid 20s for Buffalo's run defense, giving up 4.7 yards per attempt. On the other hand, for the Ravens, you want to look at their rushing offense, and obviously we know what Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson can do on the ground. I'd certainly attack them with those two guys, as we're very accustomed to here in Baltimore, especially in the Lamar Jackson era. Baltimore has the top rushing offense in the league, 5.9 yards per attempt. Derrick Henry, we saw a breakthrough from him in week 3. Lamar's been taking the rushing lanes when he's had opportunities as well. But here's how Baltimore matches up with Buffalo. On the offensive side of the ball, we know that Baltimore wants to play heavy. They want to get their heavy personnel guys in, imbalanced lines, rotations on the offensive line. There is so much that this team can do with those looks. And for Buffalo, they don't necessarily have the heavy personnel to match up with what Baltimore wants to do. They play a lot of lighter personnel packages, a lot of multiple DB packages. They don't necessarily load up boxes with multiple big linebackers or stack the lineup like that. And they haven't necessarily changed, right? We talked about this with Joe Marino, who hosts Locked On Bills, covers the Bills on a daily basis. And he talked about it with us on Crossover Thursday. Even when Buffalo has been challenged in some of these looks, they don't adjust what they do, or at least they haven't adjusted what they've done. If I'm Baltimore and I see this light personnel grouping out there for Buffalo or multiple light personnel groupings, I'm loading these boxes up and I'm putting Patrick Ricard out there. I'm going 2 tight ends, even 3, and I'm just establishing my will. We talked about that with Sam and Njoku on Friday's episode. I mean, the Ravens have all the tools here and all the keys to go out there and impose their will. And plus, I'm not trying to throw at Buffalo like that. I'm not trying to air the ball out 40 times, but I'm the Ravens. Buffalo, despite the injuries they've gone through in their secondary so far this season, they're obviously undergoing a bit of a change after letting go of some veterans in their secondary, including Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde. They have some great young DBs, and Buffalo's pass defense right now is fourth in the league entering week 4. And I'm not trying to go after that. I mean, if I'm the Ravens, I'm trying to impose my will on the ground and try to do that. Actually, I misspoke. Buffalo's pass defense is actually second in the league. So not fourth, actually second, with 4 yards per attempt given up. So even better than I thought off the bat. I thought I'd read it right, but apparently I did not, and it's even worse for Baltimore than I thought. So I think that if Baltimore can establish their ground game, and as we've talked about every single week on this show, work play action off of that. You can do straight dropbacks if you want, but the Ravens in that Dallas game, they completely leaned into the run the ball formula. Just 3 straight dropbacks for the Ravens in that game. And the offensive line held up a lot better. I thought they got to the second level a lot better as well, and they were just hitting their blocks. We saw good adjustments by Daniel Falele. Obviously, Andrew Voorhees doubtful to play in this game, so we'll see what they decide to do on the offensive line, whether it's just plug in playing Ben Cleveland at left guard, or do they move Patrick McCary over to left guard and put Roger Rosengarten at right tackle? Is it Josh Jones at left guard? There are a bunch of things that they could do there. But this is going to be key because Buffalo's defense, look, Dallas's front, outside of Micah Parsons and I guess DeMarcus Lawrence as well, they have not too much on that defensive line. Buffalo, on the other hand, you got a rejuvenated Von Miller, Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau. They have a bunch of guys that can make you pay. Greg Rousseau, already 3 sacks this season, not even to mention guys like AJ Epinesa, who has a sack this year. And Von Miller also has 3 sacks. Both those guys have looked really good. So 3 sacks in 3 games for each of those 2 players. And I mentioned Ed Oliver, who can be just a menace on the interior. So this Ravens offensive line is going to be a lot more challenged than they were in week 3 against Dallas, here in week 4 against Buffalo. But again, if Buffalo can't stop the run, I'm just going at it with Derrick Henry this whole game and saying, hey, we're going to run it over to the left side. Again, they had a lot more success running to the left as opposed to the right in week 3. And I think they will handle that and do business as usual like that again. But I wouldn't make it too cute. Like, if I'm the Ravens, I'm not getting too cute with this thing. I'm trying to establish the run game early. Plus, Buffalo plays packages. Buffalo and Baltimore's defense, and we'll get into this in a couple minutes in the second segment, but Buffalo's defense is not one, especially when they're talking about throwing the ball, that will give up all these huge 30, 40-yard chunk plays. They play too high looks, too high shells a lot of the time, and they essentially say, take the short and intermediate stuff. We're not going to let you beat us deep. Baltimore's defense is a lot similar. But I'm not expecting a bunch of big firework plays in terms of, oh, you're airing the ball out 50 yards down the field. And for the record, both offenses don't really do that anyway, even against certain looks. They tend to take the short intermediate stuff in the passing game, and that's fine. I mean, Josh Allen's been favoring that as well as Lamar Jackson. So I'd expect this to be a ground and pound game on both sides of the ball. The difference is that Baltimore's run defense is a lot more stout than Buffalo's. And so I'm not trying to get too cute with this if I'm Todd Monken and John Harbaugh. I'm just trying to run the ball early, establish that domination. And if they can do that and get out to an early lead, I think everything falls into place. Coming up, though, in the second part of the show, we'll be talking about the flip side of this. We're flipping the field. Buffalo's offense, Baltimore's defense. How do they match up with one another? Stay tuned. Plenty to talk about here on the show. First, the show is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows the others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individuals with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. And the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. So one Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks because this going on when September ends. Plus, PrizePicks puts their members first. All withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. And so for this Ravens and Bills game, if you like Derrick Henry, if this is going to be a ground and pound game, in your opinion, in this one, maybe Derrick Henry more on the rushing yards, or maybe even James Cook on the other side, more on his rushing yards as well. You can do that over on PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. You just go to Locked On NFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. Let's go to Locked On NFL on PrizePicks and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. We're back our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this game day edition episode. Really appreciate everybody for being here, making Locked On Ravens both your first listen of the day and a part of your day in general. Maybe you're listening to this as you're getting ready to go down to a tailgate, getting ready to go down to the stadium, or maybe a watch party. And we have these again every single Sunday for game day. Obviously, for the 1 p.m. games, 4 p.m. games, these primetime Sunday night matchups as well. This is a new thing we're doing this season on Locked On Ravens. And so far, I think it's been a pretty positive response. So I'm glad people are enjoying them. I'm certainly enjoying doing them as well. And this Ravens and Bills game is going to be really, really good. So however you're listening, wherever and whenever, thank you for tuning in to the episode today. But let's talk about the flip side of the field, right? We talked about the Ravens offense first, the Bills defense in the first part of the show. Now, let's flip the field, talk about the Bills offense first, the Ravens defense. Obviously, the name of the game here is stopping Josh Allen, much like on the Buffalo side of things defensively, it's stopping Lamar Jackson. 2 great quarterbacks. It's not necessarily, hey, can you stop them? It's more so, can you contain them? I mean, you have to give respect to Josh Allen. I mean, if the season ended today, he's certainly playing like the MVP. Lamar, I think, look, Lamar has played better than the Ravens record indicates, obviously at 1-2, but man, Josh Allen and that Bills offense is just absolutely decimating teams. But this is going to be, in my opinion, their toughest defensive test of the season, at least in the run game. The secondary might leave a little more to be desired than even I thought it would at the start of the season. I think that's been a little more of a surprise for people. But Buffalo, their bread and butter here offensively, they do so many things well on the offensive side of the ball. And in terms of passing, they're second in the league, right? Josh Allen has that team humming in the pass game. Rushing wise, hasn't necessarily been great for them. They're bottom third of the league, 21st overall, 4.1 yards per attempt. So again, what you want to do with this Bills offense is don't give up anything over top and just limit the chunk plays overall. Again, Josh Allen, he's not necessarily going to be throwing the ball 50 yards over your head. Maybe they try it a couple of times in this game. I wouldn't be shocked if one team tries to establish that. But it's going to be on guys like Marlon Humphrey to continue his strong start to the season. Marlon's played great over the first 3 weeks of the season. Kyle Hamilton struggled those first couple weeks. Now it seems like he's back. So matching up against guys like Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox potentially, that's going to be something. Even James Cook out of the backfield, but that's also something like Roquan Smith. Roquan Smith is going to have to be a big factor in this one as well. He's struggled through 3 weeks, at least by Roquan Smith's standards. But the Bills, the big story has been trading away Stephon Diggs. How is that going to look with their offense? With obviously a star receiver out the door, don't necessarily replace him with another star. They rely on draft picks. Some of the guys already on the roster signed a vet or two here. But it's really been Khalil Shakir who's stepped up for them with 168 yards on 14 receptions so far. But other than that, I mean, Curtis Samuel it's Dalton Kincaid next. Okay, Khalil Shakir has 14 catches. Dalton Kincaid next with 8. Then it's James Cook with 8 as well. Curtis Samuel with 6. Keon Coleman with 5. So, again, this team isn't necessarily getting a ton of production there, but they're still able to dominate teams the way that they have because they've just been dominating all over the place. Josh Allen has thrown the ball 72 times in 3 games, so less than 25 passes per game, which is pretty impressive. 24 passes per game there overall. And part of it, again, we have to look at this as game flow, right? Buffalo's been up by a lot in these games, and Josh is either sitting in some of the fourth quarters or the game flow is they just need to run the ball, get out of there. So it is a little bit skewed in that way, but I don't expect that to be what happens in this game. Baltimore's run defense is too good. I expect the Ravens to be able to shut down the run game decently effectively in this game, but you're going to have to stop the combination of James Cook and Josh Allen. Josh Allen averaging 5 yards per carry, James Cook averaging 4.6. So very formidable duo there. And I think that if you're able to stop those guys, that just shuts down what they want to do, forces them to air the ball out a little bit. Plus, you can dictate this if you're Baltimore's defense. If you impose your will offensively, get out to a lead, Buffalo, while they will try not to abandon the run game, it's a big part of what they try to do each and every week. So you then can just focus on other things. Where Josh Allen, he'll work out into space. He'll get his on the ground. I'm not saying the Ravens will be completely successful doing this because this will be Baltimore's toughest test, right? Kansas City, look, we can admit Kansas City offensively hasn't really played super well through 3 weeks, right? Like Mahomes has not looked like the vintage Mahomes, really. It's been Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen is playing like the best quarterback in football right now. And it's up to the Ravens defense, especially in the secondary, to be able to stop that. But that all starts with making the Buffalo offense one-dimensional, especially a group that is in the bottom third of the league in rushing offense right now. So that's where I would start with the Baltimore defense. Obviously not having Michael Pierce there is a decently big loss if he's unable to play again without doubtful tag. But then it's guys like Travis Jones. Can he step up? Nnamdi Madubuike, can he continue to do his thing? In the pass rushing department, Kyle Van Noy can continue his strong start to the season. Dafe Owe doing his thing. You know, can Trenton Simpson? Trenton Simpson is going to match up on some of these guys, right? With his athletic profile, he's really good at some of the kind of dictating some of those matchups. So I think he's going to be somebody that's a big X factor in this one as well. I don't think this is going to be a high scoring game. I don't think it's really going to be a low scoring game either. Both these teams are going to get theirs. And the stat that I will point to and kind of a preview for the final part of the show here is that the Ravens are 20-3 in home primetime games in the John Harbaugh era at M&T Bank Stadium. So the history is there, and you would hope that the Ravens can continue that history in week number 4. Coming up in the final part of the show, final predictions. We'll get into some other things as well as it pertains to players to watch and a lot more. Stay tuned. Plenty to talk about in this game day edition of the show. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when we get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So for this Ravens and Bills game, the Ravens are 2.5-point favorites against Buffalo. So if you like that from the Ravens side or the Bills side, be sure to head over to FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. We return our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here, talking with you on game day. The Ravens and Bills set to match up in Week 4 on Sunday Night Football. A great matchup. Just as a reminder, we will be back here later tonight. Once the game ends, we'll do an instant reaction episode and break down everything that happened in that Baltimore and Buffalo game. We do instant reaction episodes for every single Ravens game right after the fact. So be sure to, again, hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube, turn notifications on so you know when we do go live. And also, of course, it'll be available for playback both in video and in audio form. So really appreciate the communities we've built up here in video form. Hit 8,000 subscribers about a week or so ago, and we're continuing to grow. And next up is 9,000, and appreciate everybody who's been on the video journey. But the audio journey started a couple years before the video journey, and that community continues to grow every day as well. So appreciate all the audio listeners, the social media communities, Twitter, Instagram. We got subtext going on. Locked On Ravens, it's been growing forever now, and I can't thank everybody enough for the support. Now, one thing to wrap up the defense, because I do want to bring up Baltimore stats through 3 weeks, on the defensive side of the ball, because there is a pretty big disparity in terms of their run defense versus their pass defense. So through 3 weeks, Baltimore's rushing defense, we talked about this, #1 yards per attempt on the ground, #1 total yards on the ground. Baltimore's run defense is incredible. 150 yards in 3 games is crazy, and 2.8 yards per attempt. And again, we do have to put context into this. The Ravens have gotten up on teams and they've had to abandon the run, and there hasn't necessarily been the sample size, but again, that's exactly what goes into my point of how I grade out run and pass defenses, where despite them not having a ton of rushes against them, which doesn't result in as many total yards, they're stopping the run when it gets run at them with 2.8 yards per attempt. So that's not the concern, but the pass defense is tied 26 in yards per attempt at 6.9, and they are dead last in the league in total yards given up. And again, that can be somewhat game flow, but we can all say, right? The Ravens secondary has struggled more than a lot of people thought it would. Marcus Williams has been a guy that has struggled immensely to start the season. They've had some up and down games from a couple other members of their secondary. Some, like Marlon Humphrey, have been playing really well. But we've also seen miscommunications and guys trying to get used to Zach Orr as a defensive coordinator. So it all just goes hand in hand. I expect it to get better. There's too much talent in that secondary, so you hope at least it gets better. But this is a tough test. This Bills offense is humming along right now, although I don't expect this game to go the way these last couple of Bills games have gone for them in week 2 and 3. But to me, players to watch, I think it's really, really important to first dive into Mark Andrews. Andrews has been a guy, and look, I know this because 1, I've just watched the games, but 2, invest a lot of fantasy stock into him, and he hasn't been helping my teams out. But he hasn't been getting the snaps. The targets have somewhat been there, but I mean, in week 3, he had 1 target, and that was game flow. They only threw the ball 15 times, so targets were sparse. But he's a guy that, I'm not giving up on Mark Andrews through 3 weeks. Obviously, we see the tight end, and I'll pull up those tight end snaps right here. This is what happened in week 3. Isaiah Likely had 39 snaps, 62%. Charlie Kohler, 26, that's 41%. Mark Andrews last on the team in tight end snaps, 21, 33%. Game flow plays a part. Keeping Andrews fresh, I'm sure plays a part. But Andrews is someone who means so much to this Ravens offense. And even if he's just out there, we saw in that Chiefs game, teams have to respect the fact that he's on the field. We know the chemistry he and Lamar has. We know that aspect of it is so hard to stop once it gets rolling. But we can all admit that Mark Andrews hasn't had a very good start to the season. Mark actually talked about it and said, I feel good. I feel like I'm running fast. I'm the same old Mark doing the same old things. My time will come. But again, I'm just worried about execution and helping this team win. However I can do that, I will. So team first approach from Mark Andrews. You absolutely love to hear that. And, this whole team is pretty selfless, right? And even if Andrews isn't racking up the yards, racking up the touchdowns, the targets, again, it takes a certain level of player to come play in this Baltimore offense. And, all these guys are selfless, and you love to see it when Andrews and just other guys on the team say something like that. Second player to watch, you saw it right there, Justin Tucker. Justin Tucker is a guy that, look, dead last in the league right now in terms of kicker accuracy, 29 out of 29, 62.5%. We know the stats of him being 1 of 7 from 50 over the last 2 seasons. So he has to get it going. Him versus Tyler Bass. Tyler Bass isn't necessarily the best kicker in the league right now either. He certainly had his fair share of struggles. So it's important for Tucker to get back on track because in a game like this, every single point matters. And the Ravens have had that consistency for so long. You just hope he can find it again and fast. He talked about it as a technique issue. But, man, Tucker is so important to what this team does, especially because, how many times have we seen this team eke out a win on a Justin Tucker field goal because Tucker was just hitting from crazy, crazy long distances. So he's a guy that you absolutely have to look out for. And finally, we mentioned him too, Roquan Smith. By Roquan Smith's standards, he has struggled to start the season. And part of it is he just doesn't look necessarily in shape right now. He looks a little bit heavier than a lot of people expected him to come into the year playing. He looks slow out there. The coverage hasn't been up there for him. And it's been kind of a slog for Roquan Smith so far through 3 weeks. So he's someone who has to get back on track because we know how important he is as a member of this defense. And honestly, one of the big leaders of that defense, especially vocally. Keys to victory in this game. 1, dominate on the ground. You have to. 2, contain Josh Allen. Goes right into key 1. 3, foot on the gas. If this team is up by 14 points in the fourth quarter, this team is up 21 points in the fourth quarter, I want to see him go up by 28. I want to see him go up by 35. I don't care what that scoreboard says. I don't even know what lead I'd feel comfortable with them having at the start of the fourth quarter. We had Sam Njoku on Friday. He said 28 points, 4 touchdowns. I guess I'm with Sam. I'd probably say maybe 28, maybe 27. But they cannot continue to be conservative. That was the messaging throughout the castle this week, and I don't expect them to be that. But again, we've seen this story too many times. We've gone through this too many times just watching this Ravens team. In the fourth quarter, we all know what it is. Whatever lead they have in the fourth quarter tonight, I'm sure no fan is going to feel comfortable with it, right? And we know I think they're going to be a lot more aggressive this time around. I think they're going to have to be because I don't expect them to be up big in the fourth quarter in this game. But that's the final key for me is shake those woes of being too conservative in the fourth quarter and impose your will throughout the entire 60 minutes. So the moment you've all been waiting for, prediction time. Ravens 27, Bills 26. I have the Ravens winning this game, and I have it. We talked about Justin Tucker. I have it on a Justin Tucker field goal. I think this game is going to come down to whoever has the ball last, whoever is able to convert in the red zone more. As I mentioned, both Baltimore and Buffalo do not like to give up anything deep. So if you're talking about taking the short and intermediate stuff, what both teams do, defenses do is they say, take that short and intermediate stuff. And then when you get down to the red zone, we're going to tighten up and make you only kick a punt or a field goal. A punt or a field goal in every possession is a successful possession, right? Field goals, you don't want to go too crazy, but with this Baltimore offense, and honestly Buffalo's too, if you can hold the opposing offense to a kick, meaning a field goal or a punt, I think you win the game 99 times out of 100 with how good those offenses can be. So I think that, again, whoever has the more successful red zone conversions, touchdowns, not field goals, touchdowns, I expect that team to win the game. So between Baltimore and Buffalo, 2 high-powered offenses, 2 good defenses, and 1 really good matchup coming up on Sunday Night Football. That's all I have for you today on Locked On Ravens. Really appreciate everybody tuning in for this game day episode. Again, we do these every single Sunday before Sunday games. Obviously, when we have Monday games, Thursday games, our game day episodes are just our regularly scheduled 6 a.m. programming. But coming up later tonight, we'll be back here. We'll be breaking down everything that happened in that Ravens and Bills matchup, win or lose, hopefully a win, but win or lose. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.